I mean, trains are great and all, but an armored train carrying massive guns is just so much cooler. Hey people, voice talking to you, and today we're taking a look at Break Siege, a new real-time strategy deck builder roguelike where you bust through enemy strongholds with a militarized locomotive. If you'd like to check this game out for yourself or download the demo, there's a link for you down in the description, and right next to that is a link to my full playthrough stream just in case you want to see some more gameplay and my first impressions. In this futuristic sci-fi world, most of the galaxy has been overtaken by a dystopian empire. We are the engineer of SteelCourage, an armored train capable of utilizing massive weapons and breaking through the empire's blockade to move vital intel, personnel, and supplies for the rebellion. In the demo, we can only play as a single mercenary, but judging by his unique trait, I'm guessing we'll be able to swap to different engineers in the full version to make use of different strategies. If there's going to be other customization or meta progression between runs, I'm not sure. Now, before I go any further, it's important to note that the developers of this title are Chinese, so English is obviously not their first language. In fact, it appears that either their grasp of English is quite poor, or more likely, they used some sort of fundamentally flawed translation software.
Repair, damn copper, rotten iron, rotten glue shoes.
What? The typos are frequent and jarring, and not only does this make it extremely difficult to understand what the characters are saying, it also makes the lack of a thorough tutorial much more damaging to the experience. I did eventually manage to figure out roughly how everything works, but I'll be referencing this issue a lot. Aside from what I've already mentioned, there isn't much more story to this game, which is fine for a roguelike like this one, but some sort of meta progression or maybe a campaign would be a nice addition for sure. With that in mind, let's get right into the gameplay. Each run consists of a railway map that leads us from our entry tunnel to a transfer zone at the end. Along the way, we can choose which routes to follow and stop at different stations of our choosing. Each station will have a number of structures around it, which can provide different benefits and opportunities. For example, material warehouses will simply earn us materials that can be used at forges, taverns, or workshops to upgrade and repair our train, improve or buy new cards, or even hire mercenaries for special bonuses. Transfer warehouses will offer us materials in exchange for taking on passengers or additional cars, most of which will add negative traits to our train or our deck. There's also these abandoned buildings we can send our mercenaries to search. They might find something valuable, but they might also get injured in the process. Now, I have no idea what these injuries actually do, but we can remove them at a restoration warehouse. Of course, most of these actions will also cost us time. Keep in mind, we're a blockade runner, and the Empire will be hot on our tail the entire time. This makes it important to limit how long you remain in one place, and pay attention to your train's movement speed. We can't outrun these pursuers forever, but the more of them we have to fight off, the stronger future swarms will become. Whether a swarm's caught up to you or you've entered an Empire stronghold, eventually you'll have to fight. Combat takes place in real time, but you can pause at any point to play cards or rethink your strategy. There's 3 kinds of those cards in our deck: arms, attacks, and tactics. Arms are the weapons that can be attached to our train cars, and each one has its own statistics. Most of these weapons will automatically attack enemies in specific positions, depending on where they're placed, though enemies can damage and destroy these emplacements if we aren't careful. Attacks are exactly what they sound like, and typically fire some sort of blaster or rockets from our engine's main gun. Attacks fire as soon as they're played, and the user has to choose the targeted location where the attack will land. This is especially important to consider since some enemies will move, and some attacks will have additional features such as area of effect, damage, or piercing ability. Tactics are augments that can shift the flow of battle, such as providing us with a shield or debuffing enemies. Most cards will also have an energy cost, and our engine can only provide us with a set amount of energy at once. Don't worry if you run out though, because for long we'll be able to reload our train, which will completely refill our energy while discarding our remaining hand and drawing a new one. I actually really love this flow of battle. Your hand will change constantly, and so should your tactics, because enemies aren't just drones with guns. Some enemies will use rockets to bypass your defenses or even steal your shield while providing cover for other ships. Some will add blockers to your deck or debuff your weapons. There's already some great enemy variety here, and I'd love to see what else is in store. The importance of timing and position means this isn't just a card game either. You have to keep track of which enemy is where and time your attacks to deal the most damage or bypass shields. It's dynamic and really fun once you get the hang of it. That said, the overall difficulty is pretty low. I didn't even get close to losing, and I made it all the way to the end on my first run, even after I took pretty much every debuff I was offered. The other major issue here was, once again, the translation. Card games will often use shorter descriptions or omit words to fit the effect into a small space, but with the lack of proper tutorialization and the severely flawed translation, the descriptions made little to no sense.
What? If arm cost is greater than 2 when destroyed, train power +1. What do these things mean?
Figuring out everything was mostly trial and error, which makes the fact that I absolutely dominated every swarm of enemies even more remarkable. Now, the low difficulty is kind of a non-issue. It should be tweaked, but this was presumably the first level and also just a demo. The translation, on the other hand, is really important, especially since the devs seem to be catering to an English-speaking audience as well. I strongly recommend they hire a proper translator or at least a developer who speaks English. Playing a card game when you don't understand the rules can be super frustrating, and even more so when you know the rules but you don't understand what your cards do. I've played enough games to figure out that a debuff called Crack probably increases damage taken and that Power increases damage dealt, but a lot of these are less obvious, and players shouldn't have to do this to begin with. On that note, I'd suggest they add some sort of compendium off to the side that explains each effect or game term. Adding a journal of weapons, cards, and or enemies the players encountered would be another great addition. Lots of roguelike players love collecting stuff like that, so play into your audience. The last big kicker was the ending.
Assault Vulture Eagle level, the Imperial Army's assault combat aircraft carrier? Oh dear.
As I said, I reached the end of the demo pretty easily, and though the boss fight was fun, it did become long and repetitive. That part I can forgive, but the bug that froze the game every time the boss reached low health, I cannot. Sure, bugs are to be expected, so I used their in-demo bug report, which sent me to a read-only Google form.
Oh, you can only view this document.
I don't know how you expect your players to give you feedback when they're entirely unable to send you their error codes. So yeah, this game is pretty messy as far as UI, translation, and developer involvement are concerned. On the other hand though, I love the pixel art visual style and the stellar music. The visuals are quirky and unique while still retaining that retro feel, and the music was great too, but they definitely either need a smoother transition so there isn't an obvious pause each time the track loops, or some variety so that there's more to enjoy. Despite the jank, I really enjoyed this one, and I hope it gets cleaned up so we can see its potential fulfilled. But I'm also just the voice in your head, so what are your thoughts on Break Siege? Does the lack of a proper story bother you, or is the impressive style enough to keep you interested? You think this game will get the upgrades it needs to be successful, or are you skeptical about the quality? Let's talk down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, leaving a like helps get the channel through the algorithm and gets the Empire off my tail. If you want more, subscribing is the best way to support the channel and keep new content coming your way because I put out new stuff every week. Thanks so much for listening to me today, and you'll be hearing from me again real soon.